life's been really interesting with all the ups and downs and changes with the corporate world and just trying to make it day to day.
Well, that's true, Michelle, and you know, things go up and down, and you always find a way to deal with it no matter what. And now is a particularly difficult time because after 20 years of employment, now I'm in my middle 50s. I got laid off by my company. They closed the plant that I worked at, and you know how it goes. The younger people are given the preferential treatment typically, and so now I have to figure out how to go from here to Medicare.
Wow.
Which begins at age 65. I still have one child in high school and one that's finishing college, so there's some things that I'd like to do that way, but it just seems that life isn't really what it was a generation ago.
Yeah, so there were some hopes or expectations and some optimism that you had, and then all of a sudden it gets...
What's happened over the last a couple of generations really is that loyalty between employer and employee has vanished on both sides. The employers I believe started it actually, but it's true on both sides. The employers don't pretend to offer any degree of paternalism or guaranteed employment, or maybe they shouldn't, but the General Motors model and General Motors itself is not nearly the same entity that it was 50 years ago. And the same thing from the employee. The employee has no loyalty either. They just get up and go wherever they want, when they want, without regard to, very often, to the needs of the employer either. So it's both ways, but what it's done is it means that of necessity you can expect to have to change jobs whether you want to or not.
Wow.
I think the average now is something like it's over 7 times in a lifetime. So that's something that you can't expect or hope for unless you own the company. And if it's a small business, I would remind people that 80% of those fail within 5 years. So that's a tough road too. There's many small businesses, and they're the backbone of the economy. There are many that make it and thrive even from generation to generation. But there's a whole lot more that come and go.
Yeah. So you use this theme of loyalty. So it sounds like there was a time, years ago especially, where there was more of a focus on loyalty, that you could have seen that more. You said both from the employer to employee as well as the employee to the company, and something's changed along the way.
All those days are gone.
Yeah.
It no longer applies. I mean, I think just simply, if you look at businesses that were around 50 years ago and today, you would have a vastly different list. It's I don't know, I'm not smart enough to know what brought all this about. All I know is that you just can't expect to go and work. Companies get bought and sold, just like goods these days,
So I know in talking the last few sessions we've talked about how even being in your mid-50s that you've had several, jobs, but you've for longer committed periods of time during that time period. So you've seen this change in loyalty, this shift in loyalty, but yet you've managed through it compared to some other people maybe not managing as well. So I'm wondering how you've been able to manage in spite of that shift.
Well, you do what you have to do to take care of your family and generate the income that you need in order to provide for them. I mean, I've had to had 7 jobs so far, and had to move from state to state to do that, and to some people that's unacceptable, and they have other ways to approach it. Now you've probably heard there's a big debate on unemployment and how long it should last, and that's certainly a stopgap, not nearly sufficient to do what most people would want to do, but still quite helpful. So that, I suppose, will be my partial safety net in this case, remembering that this last job I've had for 20 years, so I figured I would stick it out as long as I could, as long as the employment was viable, and it ceased to be that. So now I have to look at different options, and again, to see how I get from here to Medicare, so to speak, or Social Security. If you prefer that, I would like to actually work till I'm about 70, because I don't really see a need to retire just to retire.
Sure.
I mean, one option that most people do come up with is to start their own business. And millions have done that. Few have succeeded. But that is one option if you want to try to do that. So you rely on the support of your family and friends, and you scrounge for job opportunities and take the best one you can find, and if that's not good enough, use that as a stepping stone. The difficulty, as you know, is that the older you get, at least once you get past about 45,
Sure.
the harder it is to secure employment positions, because companies prefer younger people.
Right.
They may deny that, but the statistics are pretty compelling in that regard. So it becomes harder. Up until maybe your mid-40s, it's really not an issue. But after that, it can be.
So I hear some definite strengths in what you're saying. In spite of the toughness of finding positions because of age and the younger people coming in, the changes in loyalty, I hear 2 or 3 real strong points that you're making. So for you, one has been perseverance. When some people have said, well, heck, if I can't get a top position in management that I got before, and I can't get in on the higher up floor, why would I start lower, or why would I move? Or you're saying, you know, perseverance, adaptability too, being willing to move or try a new location, or a variation of what you may have gotten a degree in or something like that, has really opened the doors for you through the years, and that you're hoping that will also help even in this interim time until you get to, you know, your
that's
benefits.
certainly an option too. I mean, there are pockets of employment that where people are hiring. Healthcare, for example, the healthcare industry is in general, I think, is expanding and will continue to expand. So as you suggest, getting training, special training, specific training in that area to make yourself qualified for those jobs might be helpful. Also, there are parts of the country that have low unemployment. North Dakota, for example, has an employment rate of something in the neighborhood of 3.5%.
Wow.
So if you're willing to move up there and work in the oil-related industries that are burgeoning, or other things that are going on, there are pockets what you can do. Now, the question becomes, how much do you want to change? If your family is in a particular area, do you want to go, 1,500 miles away where you don't know anybody?
Sure.
And there is no family support because there is no family in that area. So those are things that everybody wrestles with from time to time. The only people that seem to escape it would be the people that are community-related jobs that are demand-related. For example, firemen, policemen, teachers. They tend to be pretty much protected against unemployment. Not totally, but pretty much. And that's the other way to do it, is to, everybody knows now that the public sector pays higher than the private sector, both in salary and benefits. So that's an option that I'll be looking at to see if I could find something suitable in the public sector, because those jobs to some degree tend to be more permanent. Not the political appointee kind of jobs, there are those too, but the ones that are to serve the constituents, the job and family services, for example, in Ohio, or the educational support that's there, and so forth and so on.
So, and I heard you say a significant phrase. You said willingness to change, and you highlighted again the idea that some people, they may have a pretty narrow definition of, I want to be in this geographic locale, or I want to be near my relatives, or I want to do only this certain type of job that's in this area. But it sounds like one of the strengths that you've had has been willingness to change, and even through the years, I mean, with the different jobs.
Some would call it a strength, some would call it a weakness. I mean, your family might call it a weakness if you pick up and move them from, say, Illinois to New Jersey, for example. So that's a matter of perspective. But yeah, that's a decision that everybody or every family, if and when the conditions come up, that they have to make.
Sure.
Do you want to get? Do you want to get into a profession? For example, I've given some examples: fireman, policeman, teacher, where you might have a reasonable expectation of being able to be employed in that for the foreseeable future. And those are decisions that are individual and have to be made by each individual according to their situation and goals. I couldn't make it for them. They would each have to make it for themselves.
But in terms of, you said it could be a strength or weakness, it sounds like for you that may be a tool that may help you get from this point to, you know, Medicare or whatever the benefits are that you're talking about, you know, so in the next 10 years or whatever. So I'm looking at the willingness to change has helped you get this far, and sounds like for you at least it's been a strength, and that that may also, I'm just wondering, could that same strategy, so to speak, could that possibly be helpful from here on out, especially when we figure in the things about the hiring of younger people, the decrease in loyalty from employers as well as employees, the changing face of the economy, all those different factors that you've mentioned, that willingness to change just sounds like it's helped you in some ways.
Well, I think you want to set your personal goals and prioritize them, however those may be, and then you try to implement them as best you can. So if your goal is, I will not move, then, as we know people that have said that will not move, then your strategy becomes more of, well, let me see what opportunities are there, and I'll take the best I can get and use that as a stepping stone, which would keep me from moving. I may be working digging ditches for a while or doing something else locally because I don't have to move.
Sure.
And that might be more of a catalyst to change your job skills, because you've said, I will not move, so therefore that takes that off the table. So you can't take that oil job in North Dakota. Sure. You would have to take something that's available locally, and whatever you could find. I mean, I know somebody that decided they would be a handyman and get a career out of it, and did fine. Did fine with it. So it depends. You just have to prioritize and look at that from your own hierarchy of priorities.
So help me understand. You were talking a 10-year time frame, I think you mentioned, from your mid-50s to...
Well, I would prefer it to be 70, but yeah.
Okay,
and
so...
I don't see any reason in my case. You want to keep busy and keep moving, otherwise you die. I mean, that's been shown. Just look at the auto industry employees after they retire. An incredible number of them don't last very long because their sense of worth is now taken away from them, I guess, from their jobs. So, yeah, you got to keep busy and keep moving and do things that you want to do.
So keeping busy, not just until you have your Medicaid benefits or until 70, but even beyond that, it sounds keeping busy and keeping... Help me understand some of your goals. You were talking about, in a broad sense, of some of the different array of things people may want, but you mentioned your kids, one being in high school, and another one is...
Certainly, I wish my kids well, and they have to make their decisions once they complete whatever education, and then they have to make their choices of what they're going to do. I mean, one option, which I've promoted over the years, is to join the military if they provide some substantial benefits in education and other things. I'm not sure everybody wants to go to Afghanistan, but it is an option. And So the three kids that I have, they all, one of them's out there doing his thing, and the college person will be shortly, and the high schooler, of course, will have to decide how to address that. But, you know, I'm not, I don't have any opinions about that. All I really want them to be is independent, productive citizens, be able to hold their own and pay their bills and
Sure.
do what they want to do. I'm not gonna get weigh in on that.
Sure. Sure, and the reason I brought that up too is to help clarify your goals between now and 70 and the benefits. But I heard you, interestingly enough, use the same exact phrase with, you know, discussing them about I want them to exercise their options as you did earlier about I have exercised my options. So that sounds to be a pretty important thing for you, that you're feeling like you can move forward into the future, your goals and your things, if only other people could exercise their options, live responsibly and productively, and then, you know, you continue to do that as well.
Well, I think that that people have to be willing to take the responsibility to manage their life. They can't blame someone else.
Sure.
Something happens to them, it may be unfortunate. It may be they get somebody gets cancer, or they lose a job, or their spouse dies, or runs away with another man, a woman, whatever, and those things happen every day. But I think you have to react to those, and there's a good example of where your priorities come into play. You can't control some of the things that happen in life, but as a counselor, you often advise people that you can control your reaction to it. So to me, one of the key elements is you have to accept responsibility for your life, and you have to go do the things that you need to do in order to satisfy the goals that you've set for yourself, not necessarily the goals of anybody else. And to blame someone else, or blame the government, or blame the company, or blame your boss, or blame this or that, I mean, things happen. You just have to be willing to work with that and accept that and move on. And
that's been interesting. It's been refreshing to hear this because, as you know, I do a lot of EAP counseling with a number of different people, and I know, you know, whether it's good or bad, your company that you had been working for before they made the changes or whatever gave you and several of the employees, you know, 6 or 8 EAPs you could have, but then it's like, well, what consolation is that? So I see some people come in and say, well, gosh, I have my EAPs, now what in the world am I going to do? And as you said, wallow in the victim thing. But then I hear a strength that you have where you're saying, okay, I'll come in, maybe use a few EAPs, but I'm going to get off my seat and go out there, do what I can do, be responsible, you know, take my steps that I can do to be proactive, because I can only blame the company to a degree before, you know, I need to do something myself too.
It's particularly challenging to many people today because they can do just as well on unemployment. So why should they work when the government's willing to give them money? And I don't know the solution to that, but that's something as a society I think we have to be mindful of, that we don't create a sense of dependence where people now say, why should I work? Because I'll get all these benefits from the government, and then those will be better than working anyway, so I just won't even try. I mean, one of the reasons, in my judgment, that the employment has gone down a little bit is because many people have stopped looking, and the government doesn't count those people in the statistic.
Sure.
There's also millions of people that are underemployed, that is, have a job that's beneath what their capabilities or their training or their credentials would allow them to do. So the real unemployment rate's probably close to double what is promoted by the government if you include all these other factors. So there are a lot of people that are challenged right now today, and there's some signs that overall things are getting better, but I mean, you have to try to figure out what it is you're going to try to do, and then make yourself eligible to do it. If you're going to go and decide, well, you know, a big industry for tomorrow is healthcare. I'm going to, you know, try to become eligible for those kind of jobs at any level to start with. I mean, the top job that I read about recently in terms of opportunity is a software engineer. But there are a lot of people that won't do that. They just don't have the temperament, the training, or whatever. So you got to be a little careful about reading what somebody's come up with. That may be great, but a relatively small percentage of the population could ever be software engineers.
Sure.
So you have to, have something that would suit your person's particular background and skill sets, or their ability to develop the skill set if they need to go back into training. The governments at various levels offer training for some areas, and I'll certainly be looking into that and see, because I've lost my familiarity with it. I don't know much about it.
Yeah, so I hear, the exploring of options and keep moving. I mean, it sounds like, again, that some people in your shoes would kind of be paralyzed by even the shock or the newness of the company and the changes that have happened in the company you work for, but yet you're saying, okay, I've been through this a handful of times before, maybe not exactly the same way, and the picture may not look the same way, but, I'm going to take charge, I'm going to be proactive. That's one theme I've really heard you address today. Be proactive, be responsible, move forward about things, focus on myself and what I can. And again, this theme of, options. And I also hear you saying, if you or someone else is able to, that you think it's a good idea to get the additional training too, that you're never too old to learn, or, to take all those opportunities.
Stay away from the drugs and alcohol. That won't be any good either. So, you just have to, it's got to be frustrating. I'm just starting, so I haven't reached that level of frustration with, but there are millions of people that have been seriously looking for work for months, if not years, and just haven't found it, and that's got to be really distressing and challenging to those people. So hopefully I won't be one of them after a few months, but we'll see what happens. I mean, there's I'm of the opinion that no job is too good or too poor to take, unless there's something in your conscience that you would want to do it. For example, prostitution. But assuming it's not illegal, immoral, or fattening, I think one just has to do what you need to do in order to develop your skill set and stay busy and stay employed and work towards your next position.
Sure. Well, again, I've been really encouraged by hearing the strengths that we've talked about today, and hearing your goal towards forward movement, again, of that you are looking with some level of optimism towards the future and saying, okay, I've been through some of this before, but I've always succeeded in the sense of having responsibility, going forward, looking at options, and that one of your biggest strengths has been not just sitting still and waiting for something to come to you, but that you've been very proactive in going out there with that.
I can almost guarantee you that people aren't going to come to you.
Yeah.
I mean, in this kind of a job market, you have to get out there, and it's the old salesman's game, which is you sell by knocking on doors, and the more doors you knock on, the more you're going to sell. And so you just have to keep all your options open, or maybe even develop options that that weren't even there when you started, and work it out from there.
Well, I'm pretty optimistic with the things that you're saying, that it sounds like you have a plan of action. You have a plan, you're already implementing the plan, and it sounds like you're willing to keep implementing it and keep persevering through that for a while. So I'm wondering if we can check in maybe a few weeks from now, just see how that's going from this point, towards your goals, if it can be of additional support to you, because it sounds like, unlike some of the other EAP clients, that you've been through this before, you have a plan, you have an attack plan or an approach, that you're willing to persevere at that for a while, and keep persevering, and keep knocking, and keep exploring options, as much as it takes. So
that would be a good summary.
Okay, okay. Well, thank you very much. It was good
Okay,
seeing you, and
nice
I'll
to
see you in a
see
few
you.
weeks then. Thank you.
And congratulations on your expected newborn.
Okay, thank you.